Here in Germany, authorities have banned travel from parts of neighboring Austria and the Czech Republic. The restrictions are aimed at stopping the spread of highly contagious variants of the coronavirus, which have been detected in several border regions. The European Union has criticized the travel shutdown, which is causing major disruption for workers who commute across the border.
Very little has got through this checkpoint at the Austrian-German border since early Sunday. Many drivers trying to cross from the Austrian state of Tyrol were told to turn around unless they work in a very limited number of jobs classified as essential. It's much the same situation at the German-Czech border. We have ensured that testing is available for anyone who is eligible to enter, but who doesn't have the results of a COVID-19 test. It's a difficult situation for commuters. Some are even considering temporarily moving to Germany. And they say the changes to the rules were badly communicated. We have no information. We don't know a thing. Can we drive to work tomorrow? Will we have to go into quarantine? I'm having a hard time. I don't know if my job's classified as essential or not. Will they allow me to cross over? I don't know. We need the work. It'll be hard without this work. And if you have a family back home, you have to pay the bills. There's no plan B. The Czech Commuters Association says Bavarian officials did not inform their Czech counterparts about the new rules. We won't be forced to live in Germany. We're not German citizens. We work there and we pay taxes there. But now the borders are closed again, just like they were 30 years ago. That was when Europe was divided by the Iron Curtain, and communist leaders in the East barred their citizens from traveling to the West. But today, Germany is worried about highly contagious virus variants traveling across its borders. We cannot allow these severe measures, these restrictions that have been followed so well by the population here in Germany, to be for nothing. The new variants could seriously endanger that. And that's why we have border checks and why we're turning people back. Because I believe it's necessary. Tens of thousands of commuters have now been left wondering when they'll be able to get to work.
Well, the very latest, let's take a look at the situation at the German-Czech border in the Bavarian town of Schiernding. It's a place where a lot of commuters travel to work in Germany. Our correspondent Barbara Wiesel is there for us and joins us now. So, Barbara, how's the border closure affecting people where you are?
It's affecting people gravely because they really, as we just saw, don't know what to do. Can they come? Can they not come? But what we're seeing this morning, of course, is what was to be expected. Long lines of trucks here, because after Sunday, when trucks can't drive, they all come out now and they're trying to cross the border here. And it is a very slow process because every single one of them is being stopped and the drivers do have to show a negative corona test. Now, for many drivers who just do this cross-border traveling a lot, they have to go to a test center like every other day. It is very slow, it is cumbersome, and they're complaining about it and saying it's a really very difficult procedure.
Now, this seems to have caught people on the Czech side of the border off guard, Barbara. Were they not properly informed?
No, they weren't. And that is one of the big problems, of course. People are angry. People are really dumbfounded. They don't know what's happening to them because this is their livelihood. I mean, this is about 90,000 people who come across here every day. We see on the other side, there's still some private cars lined up. But these people in there, they're presenting their work contract and they don't know whether the police will say, yes, you can go or you can't. And then from Wednesday on, it will be even less, there will be even less people allowed to come because then the rules will become even stricter and there will be a more or less total shutdown here, except for some trucks rolling. So this was badly communicated. The authorities on both sides of the borders didn't talk to each other. And local people say it leaves a very bad taste because it sort of raises suspicion against each other, and the hard-won unity and sort of togetherness of people in this big border region could very easily be lost.
Well, talking about unity, the EU tends to frown upon internal border closures. Has this closure affecting the Czech Republic and Austria been coordinated with the EU?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's been done more or less by decision in Munich, by the federal government in Bavaria, and they've just done it overnight and then just said, we will close the borders, basta, finito. And they didn't even talk to anybody, and particularly they didn't talk to the governments on the other side and say, how can we organize this? How do we tell people how this is going to work? And the question, of course, is, can you stop the virus? Can you stop it at the borders if commuters don't come over anymore? Is that really what has caused the spread of the British variant here? Nobody knows that. There is no proof for it. And so many people think that this is politically highly problematic. And also, of course, this region here will be hit again, which has already been hard hit by the corona crisis. We see many shuttered shops and places that are empty, and they will just have to take another economic hit. It is a very difficult decision.
It's also very cold there, as I can see. Not fun for the people who have to sit in their car for hours. Our correspondent Barbara Wesel there in Schöning, Bavaria. Thank you so much, Barbara. Well, here in the German capital, our political correspondent Emmanuel Schaz is also on this story. Emmanuel, what does the federal government here in Berlin make of the state of Bavaria shutting its borders?
Well, there hasn't been an official reaction from Angela Merkel herself this weekend, but the situation led to diplomatic tensions between Berlin and Vienna. The foreign minister, Alexander Schallenberg, on the Austrian side, talked to his German counterpart, Heiko Maas, yesterday, Sunday, and the German ambassador is also expected for talks by Vienna. Now, the health minister, Jens Spahn, here in Germany, defended the measures. He said that in light of the rapid spread of the variants, well, these rules were drastic, but they were indeed the best way to stabilize the infection rates in German border regions.
Now, the federal government and Germany's 16 federal states, they've been at loggerheads multiple times in this pandemic. The authority of Berlin has been challenged on occasion. Has Germany's federal system proved a liability in addressing this health emergency?
Well, definitely the crisis revealed just how much power the regions have in any federal system and revealed how much coordinated action was necessary. And time and again, we saw Chancellor Angela Merkel wanting stricter measures, and she wasn't followed by the regional state premiers. Now, Germany fares much better in terms of infections than indeed a month ago. The 7 days incidence rate at a national level is below 60 per 100,000 inhabitants, but the lockdown has still had to be reconducted, and time and again we saw the difficulties of the Chancellor of the federal government to agree on measures with the regional heads of states.
Emmanuel, thank you very much. That was our correspondent Emmanuel Schaz.
Let's get more on this now. We have DW Brussels Bureau Chief Alexandra von Namen standing by for us. Hi, Alexandra. As we mentioned, the European Union did not want border closures here. So tell us more about how Brussels is reacting to this today.
Well, as you can imagine, Brussels has condemned Germany's newest restrictions and also urged the government in Berlin to facilitate cross-border cross-border movement of commuters. Health Commissioner Kyriakis said in an interview that the fear of coronavirus mutants is understandable, but that they are not going to be stopped by closed borders. And as we just heard from Barbara, only a few weeks ago, EU leaders actually agreed that closing borders would be considered a last resort measure. So Brussels is not amused. At the same time, we have to mention that member states are allowed to temporarily introduce border checks at their borders if there is a kind of threat or emergency. And of course, the spread of new coronavirus variants can be considered as a health emergency.
And we know that the concerns over these new mutations are very high, Alexandra. So do you think that we could see other member states follow this example from Bavaria?
Well, I really think that we cannot rule that out, that can happen, because it's up to member states to decide which measures they consider appropriate and necessary. And of course, it's also up to them to decide whether border controls have to be reintroduced. Here in Belgium, for example, the government decided to ban all non-essential travel. However, we also have to say that I think that member states are aware that that could have a huge impact on the EU economy, which relies on free movement of workers and goods.
What about commuters and even tourists who are already vaccinated? Are there any measures in place to allow them to travel freely?
Not at the moment. There is some discussion here about vaccine certificates. There are some member states like Estonia, for example, who are pushing ahead with this idea. And the EU Commission also wants to have a common approach on this topic. At the moment, however, such vaccine certificates are being discussed as medical documents and not documents that would allow you to travel or to go to a restaurant.
Our Brussels Bureau Chief, Alexander van Namen, good to talk to you. Despite progress in vaccine rollouts, curfews and closures remain part of daily life in many parts of Europe. As we heard, authorities fear the spread of new virus variants. But there is one place where things seem to have loosened up, the Spanish city of Madrid. And word has gotten around to tourists.
Meeting friends and enjoying drinks in the sun, a rare pastime these days, but possible in Madrid. And that's why the Spanish capital has become a refuge for young tourists from France.
It's so depressing being in a country that is nothing's open. It's gloomy all day. You have to be back. There's a curfew at 6. You can't even see your friends. There are no cafes. There's no, you can't sit down with anyone. You literally can't do anything in France.
In Madrid, coronavirus restrictions are less strict than in other parts of Europe. A negative PCR test was enough for Zita de Montil to come here. She didn't have to quarantine and also brought a friend.
I come here, there is sun, there is friends, there is a terrace, cafe. It's amazing. It's a dream come true.
A dream that Theodor Storp and Ayub Kalbi have also pursued. The students live in Germany and are spending a few days here. They planned the trip with friends, knowing that Germany has advised its population to avoid travelling to high-risk countries.
Somehow you feel bad if you travel, because other people are self-isolating, and you're not supposed to travel at the moment. But I don't think you can stay at home for a whole year either. We want to see the world while we're in the prime of our lives.
During the day, the students explore the city. In the evenings, they stay at home. They say they feel safer keeping to themselves. Others feel differently. Madrid's police sometimes have to break up illegal parties held after curfew, with participants ignoring current contact restrictions, which is ideal for the spread of the virus. This party was organised by French tourists.
We've had to intervene on several occasions. All the participants were foreigners who had come to Madrid for a short time, 2 or 3 days. They rent an apartment and then they party.
Fines for these offences during the pandemic start at €600. Spanish authorities are in contact with their French counterparts.
We collaborate internationally, and there are mechanisms in place to pass on information, so the fines should reach them. But you have to remember they're issued by local authorities here.
Processing the fines is still a bit bumpy when partygoers don't live in Spain. Illegal parties also worried Dr. Laura Sanz. In the end, they all contribute to more infections. We already have to be very careful with family members and in our everyday lives. Unnecessary contact has to be avoided. The young people we met this afternoon in Madrid think both can work, being responsible and enjoying the freedoms of life.
We do all the PCR tests and everything. We wear the mask when we have to. We don't want to bother Spanish people, you know. We just want to live again. And in France, we cannot do that for now.
Madrid is one of the few cities in Europe that still allows some leeway, though that could change at any time.
Okay, let's look now at some of the latest developments in the pandemic. A large Israeli study shows the BioNTech-Pfizer vaccine is highly effective at preventing serious illness. Israel has vaccinated more of its population than any other country. New daily cases in the U.S. are averaging below 100,000 for the first time in months. But public health experts warn that infections remain high and restrictions should stay in place. The first vaccine doses have arrived in Australia and New Zealand. Quarantine hotel workers will be among the first to get the shots. And England opens its quarantine hotels today in a bid to keep out new COVID variants. Passengers from 33 so-called red list countries will have to spend 14 days under the new border restrictions.
A new COVID-19 vaccine candidate developed by French drug maker Sanofi and U.S. group Translate Bio will not be ready this year. The news is another setback for Sanofi. The company is already struggling with a delay in its other COVID-19 vaccine candidate, for which it has partnered with Britain's GlaxoSmithKline. The European Commission had ordered up to 300 million vaccine doses of the Sanofi GSK vaccine for the 27 member states. Well, for more, let's cross over now to our financial market correspondent, to Chelsea Delaney in Frankfurt. Chelsea, the second time Sanofi failed in its attempt to produce an effective COVID-19 vaccine. What's that mean for the French pharma company?
It's a major disappointment for Sanofi. The company had invested a lot of money and a lot of time into building out these vaccine programs, and both of them just aren't really bearing fruit at this moment. So that's a lot of wasted time. That's a lot of wasted money. And Sanofi also had been really the front runner at the beginning of the vaccine race. They had received a lot of investment from different governments. It was really seen as one of the most promising candidates, and now both of its candidates are really falling through. But I'd say this is also a bit of a blow to France in general. You know, the home of Louis Pasteur, the founder of vaccine technology. It's been really a big blow for them to not be really on the map in terms of vaccines.
Right, it must be quite disappointing, and it certainly is disappointing for millions and millions of Europeans. I mean, Europe has invested a lot in developing the vaccines. What's it mean for them?
It's also a setback for Europe as well, which has really gotten off to a very slow start in terms of vaccines. There's massive shortages of vaccines across the continent, and the Sanofi vaccines had been one of the biggest orders that the EU had placed, 300 million doses. That was one of its biggest bets. So that's certainly delaying some of the supply that the EU had been hoping for. But we also are seeing Sanofi step up and say, okay, we're not going to be producing a vaccine right now, so let's produce other vaccines. So they've struck a deal with, for example, Pfizer and BioNTech here in Germany to produce about 125 million vaccine doses. So they are reassessing and redistributing some of their capacity to produce vaccines for other companies.
All right, brilliant. Chelsea Delaney there in Frankfurt, thank you so much.